Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Schumer, Senator Sanders, Congresswoman Chu, Congresswoman Bush, Congressman DeGoose, and the incredible young advocates who are behind us who work to create a civilian climate corps. They kept that idea alive, and today we have an American climate corps that has been announced. So we thank all the young people for everything which you have done to make this moment possible. Today, we have seen all of the hard work pay off. And as disasters fueled by climate ravage our communities and our country, we know that this is not a moment too soon. Last year, we took a major step in turning our Green New Deal vision into a reality with the Inflation Reduction Act, ambitious, transformational, economy-wide legislation with jobs and justice and climate at its core. And we thank Senator Schumer for his leadership on that issue, for helping us get that historic package across the finish line. But to put it bluntly, when Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and I first introduced the Green New Deal, we knew that our solutions needed to be bolder, we had to think bigger, that Washington needed to be braver, and if we were going to combat the existential threat of climate change. And as part of that movement, we envisioned a civilian climate corps for jobs and for justice. And this week, more than 50 members of Congress called on the Biden-Harris administration to take another big, bold, brave step forward and establish a civilian climate corps through executive action. And today, President Biden listened to the movement and he delivered with an American climate corps. So today is an historic day. The President's American Climate Corps will put 20,000 trained Americans to work, mostly young people, trained and getting them paid and turning green investments into a green workforce all across our country. Tens of thousands of Americans working together for energy-efficient housing and buildings, for cities that must survive climate catastrophes, for low-cost, clean solutions in communities that need them the most, for an effort that will transform our nation to survive a transforming world. When we hear about the crises hitting our communities, climate change, racism, public health pandemics, economic inequality, it's easy to lose hope. But the creator of the original CCC, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, once said, "In these days of difficulty, we Americans everywhere must and shall choose the path of social justice, the path of faith, the path of hope, the path of love towards our fellow man." President Biden's American Climate Corps will improve on President Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps by rectifying the racial and gender inequities of the past in that program, and to build a climate corps for today, for this generation, a vision for these young people who want a better America. And with the Climate Corps, we will find a way, amid those crises, to once again walk the path of hope together. The work begins, not ends, here. We must ensure that this Climate Corps is ambitious, just, and unapologetically pro-union, done for and by environmental justice communities, and coordinated across the government by the White House, so these Climate Corps members tackle projects by the thousands with one shared purpose. And you know, we won't stop in Congress. We'll keep fighting to pass the Civilian Climate Corps for Jobs and Justice Act in order to supercharge the Climate Corps, make it even bigger than President Biden announced today. But today, after years of work alongside young people, unions, service organizations, nonprofits, legislators, and the Biden-Harris administration, we have an American Climate Corps to celebrate. The tens of thousands of American Climate Corps members will not just help us save the world from climate threats, they will help us build a world worth saving. So this is a great day. We thank all the young people for their leadership, for driving this, for creating the movement that created the momentum that made this moment possible for our country. It's just a deposit. We are going to build on this in the years ahead and make it as big as it needs to be to fight the climate crisis. And it is my honor to introduce to you just a historic leader on the issue of climate change, my partner in the Green New Deal, the great Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you so much, Senator Markey. Thank you, Senator Sanders. Thank you, Representative Chu. And we also like to thank Senate Majority Leader Schumer as well for his support in this push. The day has arrived. It is an incredibly historic day and an incredibly historic milestone, not just for the climate movement in the United States, but for organizing movements and people's movements here across the country. When we first introduced the Green New Deal, you know, there were so many cynics in our politics in Washington and beyond saying, this isn't possible, this is too big, this is too ambitious. Well, today we can say that we are starting to turn the green dream into a green reality. When we first announced the idea of a civilian climate corps in revitalizing and restoring the vision of Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the original conservation corps, we also wanted to make sure that we expanded it to address the climate crisis today. And we organized and we fought, and people knocked on doors, and they contacted their communities and their elected officials to support a civilian climate corps. And from that, we got a historic inclusion into the Build Back Better Act. But as we saw, there was that setback. And at the end of the day, at the final hour, Build Back Better had fallen apart. And at that moment, we didn't know what the path forward exactly was going to be. But it was out of organizing out of hope, and organizing out of commitment, and organizing that out of faith, if we do our part, maybe the conditions out there will come together in a way that we may not even be able to foresee. And that is exactly what has happened today. We did not expect this to be able to manifest in this specific exact pathway. But because of all of the popular support and grassroots organizing and everyday people coming together and communities saying we will not stand by while the climate crisis ravages our land, burns down our forests, and really just dissolves our public systems, we will stand up, and we're going to stand up for ourselves. That political momentum is what led the White House to approve and begin the American Conservation Corps, which was announced today. Our mission next is to make sure that we expand this and that we grow this. But starting today, 20,000 people will now be able to qualify under the brand new American Climate Corps program. And from there, in addition to that, 5 states have announced their own state-level Climate Conservation Corps programs as well. You all are changing the world. You're changing the world, and you're changing the country. And I don't want you all to forget that. I don't want anyone here to forget that, because the cynics want us to think that our fighting doesn't matter, that it won't yield anything. And the reason they do that is because they know that if you do fight, you win. If you do fight, you won. And today, you won. So I want to thank you. I want to congratulate you. And I look forward to tens of thousands, and in the future, maybe millions, of people being able to be employed, and not just in the spirit of service, but in transforming the greater American economy. So thank you all so very much. And with that, I'll introduce the one and only Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Let me thank Ed and Alexandria for their leadership role in this important effort. And we thank all of you throughout this country for understanding that there will not be a future for this planet unless we all come together and make a radical transition from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And that is what the Climate Corps project is all about. What many of us have understood from day one is not only that the climate crisis is an existential threat to the planet. And I don't have to tell anybody here what has gone on this last summer. You got to be dumb and blind not to understand what climate is doing, not only to this country. And in my own state, we have suffered the worst natural disaster since 1927. Record-breaking temperatures all over the world. Drought, flooding, people going hungry in southern Africa because they can't grow the food that they need to sustain themselves. So we have a global crisis. And what we have got to do in this country with the rest of the world is move aggressively to take on the fossil fuel industry, transform our energy system away from fossil fuel. And you guys are leading that effort, and I thank you. Point that we have made over and over again is that what we are doing here is not only good and imperative policy regarding climate change, it is good economics as well. And that is what this legislation is about. This is a start, continuing the progress that we have made, of creating millions of good-paying jobs, transforming our economy into a sustainable and energy-efficient way. So good policy is good economics. That's what this legislation is about. So I want to thank the President. I want to thank Ed and Alexandra and all of the people in the House and the Senate who have fought so hard for this legislation. It is a great start. Let's continue to go forward together. And with that, let me introduce Representative Chu.
Well, thank you. What a great day this is. I am thrilled to join Senators Markey and Sanders and Congressmember Ocasio-Cortez to celebrate the official launch of the American Climate Corps. I am just so thrilled that President Biden answered our call, the call of 50 Democratic members of Congress to establish this Climate Corps, and that now millions of young Americans can join in the fight to make sure that we fight climate change. You know, numerous of us have sponsored bills. I was one of them. In 2019, I sponsored legislation to create a National Climate Service Corps. With that, I felt we could build a better future for our planet, but also create a better future for those involved by connecting participants with opportunities for long-term careers. And what was so important is to make sure that Corps members are paid a living wage and that communities most at risk to the impacts of the climate crisis have a seat at the table when it comes to establishing priorities for Corps projects. But with this Corps, we can do something about the fact that this past summer was the Earth's hottest on record. And from deadly fires in Hawaii to extreme heat in the west to hurricanes and flooding in the east, and where I'm from in Southern California, we know we have to do something about this. Climate change is now a part of our daily lives, and it's in every corner of the earth with long-term impacts on our physical, mental, and economic well-being. But with President Biden's announcement, now we will have a strong workforce for a clean economy, and we can make that clean energy transition. Now we can respond to this crisis, and we can ensure that no community will be left behind, and that we will have 20,000 young people on career pathways to the growing fields of clean energy conservation and climate resilience. So it is a tremendous honor to celebrate this great day, and I look forward to seeing all those young people working to combat climate change. And so now I would like to have a college student and climate justice organizer with this. Oh, okay. Okay, Congress member Cori Bush.
Oh, good afternoon, Green New Deal family. I am so happy and so honored to be able to be here with you all to celebrate this momentous step in our fight for taking a just, economical, and equitable approach to addressing one of the most pressing issues of our time, climate change. I would like to start off by thanking my friends, Senator Markey and my sister in service, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, as well as Majority Leader Schumer and Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Chu for the work that you all do every single day to not only combat climate change, but to make sure that the approach we take is rooted in equity and justice. I also need to give a huge thank you to the Sunrise Movement. To the Sunrise Movement and to every advocate and activist, whether you are here today or fighting back home, know that we are so grateful and so proud to be fighting in this fight alongside you. And today is proof that we will fight and we will keep fighting, because when we fight,
We win.
when we fight,
We win.
when we fight,
We win.
I'm thankful for President Biden. I'm thankful that he took this crucial step forward to not only help to protect our planet, but to do so in a way that lifts up and supports our communities that are most impacted by the devastating effects of climate change. My district ranks among the highest across the country in rates of asthma, and many people know that I am an asthmatic as well, with rates significantly higher for Black residents than white residents. In St. Louis City, Black children are over 2 times more likely to test positive for lead in their blood than white children. In St. Louis County, residents are dealing with the harms of radioactive waste that was dumped and spread all throughout our community. In my home of St. Louis, we do not only see the impact of climate change, we feel it, we breathe it, we live it. And St. Louis is not alone. There are communities all across the country, especially our Black and brown and indigenous communities, that are dealing with the same kinds of devastating impacts and effects of climate change. That's why today's step by the Biden administration to institute a civilian climate corps is so important. This will have a positive impact on our economy by creating thousands of we don't want just jobs, we want good paying jobs. And so this creates good paying jobs for our communities. Furthermore, this program will prioritize and leverage the skills in our communities that have been historically excluded and marginalized. That's exactly what we mean when we say environmental justice. From the Inflation Reduction Act's climate investments to this jobs program, it is clear that the Green New Deal isn't only a winning strategy, it is the strategy. We will not stop until we have a Green New Deal, and we will continue to push to end the climate crisis and bring all of us toward a more sustainable, equitable, and livable future for everyone. We are mobilized, we are energized, we are galvanized, and we are going to win. Thank you. Okay. And now, I have the honor and the pleasure to bring to the microphone none other than the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, Corey.
Absolutely.
And I was going to add one-eyed. We are not going to be compromised.
We won't.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with Senator Markey, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Sanders, Representative Chu, and of course, Corey, and the great Sunrise Movement as we celebrate President Biden taking executive action to create the American Climate Corps. As you know, last August, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest climate investment in history ever by a long shot. Now, our country and our economy is being transformed by this historic investment. Already, this down payment has created thousands of good-paying jobs. We made sure of that, not just junkie jobs. And we wanted the jobs to go to people, many people of color and poor people and people who got out of prison and people who never had these jobs before. We need to make sure these funds are going to help those most affected by changing climate and rising pollution. We need to make sure that we're specifically reaching disadvantaged and minority communities that have been traditionally ignored and overlooked, as new climate-related disasters occur almost on a weekly basis. Well, what's the answer to that? The American Climate Corps will do just that. The American Climate Corps is going to focus on communities traditionally left behind. It'll help prepare workers for the new union jobs that are being created across the country using existing IRA funding. The original Civilian Conservation Corps, created by FDR, had the mission to confront a national crisis through a shared sense of purpose. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to meet that moment again. It doesn't come around very often, but it is now. And this time, it's to rescue our planet from the climate crisis. And President Biden's answering the call. The IRA funds have the ability to completely revolutionize communities across our country. That's how we wrote it. And we'll work to make sure that communities most in need receive the funding. I want to say a special thank you to the youth activists who pushed so hard for this program. I know I work closely with them in New York, the Sunrise Movement, who led the organizing effort from the beginning. We elected officials want to give all of you a round of applause. Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to make sure the next generation has a country with prosperity, opportunity, stability. These green jobs will build a stronger foundation for the next generation and ones after that. I was just in Allegheny County, along with the Bronx, the poorest county in New York. And they had a factory there. And the factory used to make equipment for coal mining. And they've converted that factory that it is now making equipment for windmills. And it's employing 200 more poor people who never had a job before. It was a beautiful moment to go to this factory. And that's happening over and over and over again. Green jobs are going to build a stronger foundation for the next generation. The jobs created by the American Climate Corps is going to offer a pathway so that people can get into the middle class and stay there. It'll be an affirmation of the power of the union movement. Industry and labor agree. Our progress on climate goals may be slowed without robust training programs, without the ladders. We believe in ladders so that people can climb up and then establish themselves with a good life. And at a time when unionized workers are standing up and demanding respect, the new American Climate Corps will further strengthen that labor movement. It'll do more than fulfill the critical needs of job training, though. It'll deal with our climate crisis. This year alone, the hottest summer on record, blistering heat waves, deadly wildfires, disastrous smog, historic floods, hurricanes, and droughts. In our divided and polarized time, the American Climate Corps will bring young people of every political orientation, creed, background together, working shoulder to shoulder to combat one of our most pressing global challenges. So I thank President Biden. I thank Senator Markey. I thank Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez for leading the fight to reinvigorate our shared sense of purpose in the fight against climate change. I am proud to be here. Thank you. Hi, Judy. Hi, Corey. Hi, Bernie. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Eddie Anderson.
See you later.
Thank you so much, Leader Schumer. And with that, we want to hand it over to, of course, back to the movement. And I'd like to introduce college student and climate organizer with Sunrise Movement, John Paul Mejia.
I don't have a printer. Wow, this is really quite a moment that we're in right now. I mean, this was an idea. This was an idea that held that a competent, caring, ambitious government could maybe solve the climate crisis, not by letting the corporations who got us into this mess get us out of it, but by trusting the people who it's meant to serve and employing them in good union-paying jobs to keep themselves safe. That's what the idea was. And like you said, it was called fringe, it was called naive, it was called all sorts of things, a dream. But thanks to so many people, thanks to unions, thanks to the movement, thanks to leaders of courage like AOC and Senator Markey, and someone who heard the call, President Biden. Thanks to all of that, the American Climate Corps today is a reality, and that's what we're here celebrating. I remember, first of all, I could never have imagined myself here, even saying something like this, only a few years ago. I have a friend and mentor from Miami here in the audience today, and I just remember, like, you know, not that long ago, I was sitting in a family friend's living room, watching Hurricane Irma plow through my home state of Florida, watching the windows rattle, and just thinking to myself, how is this getting worse? How is this getting worse? That's what a lot of people in my generation felt. I remember after this hurricane, when the clouds and the winds passed, going outside and seeing my community torn apart. I remember seeing trees toppled over cars like soda cans crushed. I remember seeing brown and yellow lines flooding or staining the walls of people's living rooms. And in that moment, I felt small. I felt disposable. Who was doing anything about this? Where were the adults in the room? But at that moment, I also saw something that changed the trajectory of my life and ultimately led me to be here today with this movement celebrating this win. I saw people in my community helping each other out, like they always have. I saw people rebuilding each other's roofs. I saw people taking care of each other's kids while some others went to go get supplies. I saw people sharing electric generators. I saw people cooking for each other. The truth is, those actions run deep in the history of black, brown, and white working people in this country, and it is what our government should reflect in order to solve something with the magnitude of the climate crisis. That is what the vision was always about when we introduced the Green New Deal. It was about actually dreaming that it was capable for us, like we've done before, to solve a crisis and put our neighbors and our community at the center of it all. And today, we actually notched a win with that vision. Different from the Inflation Reduction Act, which is huge, what the ACC, what the American Climate Corps is doing is seizing the ground and beginning to eradicate a toxic legacy of leaving people to fend for themselves, and rather opening up a new ground of possibility for us to accept a responsibility of caring for each other as integral to the moral fabric of American society. That's what we're doing here. And what did it take to get there? I mean, a whole lot, really. I mean, we knocked on doors, we talked to our neighbors, we mobilized in record numbers during a pandemic to get this message out. We elected new people to Congress that stood with us. Our movement was everywhere, and it was taking over. And there were really dark moments, too, where we thought that we lost. But we held on to hope because our communities and the people and the places we love are too much to give up on. And so, my message to the young people here in front of me, behind me, is just like look at each other right now and like remember what it feels like to win, because it's kind of rare, but when it happens, it's really special. And remember that in order to get to this moment, you had to go through some really hard ones, but you did it, and we did it together. Going forward, we're gonna have a lot more of these moments, trust, but we are going to be able to sustain ourselves in that if we commit to each other as a movement and as a community. So that being said, I want to thank y'all again for helping in this fight with us and making this a reality. And to President Biden, this weekend, thousands of young people were out on the streets asking for more. This morning, you got young people's attention. You decide what you do with that. Thank you.
Now you know why they're so effective. I think we're just going to open up for a brief Q&A. Yeah.
Question and answer that you have. Yes.
for hosting this. Can you talk a little bit more about what you think Congress needs to do to make sure that this program is effective and has the funding necessary, and more than anything else is sustained against future attacks from possibly Republican administrations that might want to undo this without the force of Congress behind it?
Well, between the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, the administration has the funding to be able to put this program in place and to create these 20,000 jobs for young people across our country. And then our job is going to be to make sure that this is just a down payment. And that in 2024, young people of all ages are going to come out and work to make sure that in 2025, we dramatically increase this program because by that time it's proven success and the clear need that is going to unfold as each new storm, each new crisis hits our country and our planet.
Absolutely. I think one of the interesting things about today's announcement and the form of the American Climate Corps is that it has a dramatic interagency aspect to it. You have the Department of Labor, the Department of Interior, the Department of Agriculture, all working, and many more, all working in conjunction with AmeriCorps, including departments like the Department of Energy, for which a program like this is largely unprecedented. So I believe that deep integration across many of our departments makes this program very deeply rooted already. And our mission from here on out is that when we take back the majority in the House of Representatives, that this represents just a down payment on the program. We want to expand this. We want it to include not only tens of thousands of more jobs, but we also want to make sure that we look forward to partnerships with agencies like the EPA, where we can also more deeply integrate beyond what has just been the opening silo that was announced today.
Questions? Who are you with? Who are you with? No, just from the press. This is a press conference. Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Wow. Oh, it's amazing.
This is spectacular.
Oh, you are great.
Thank you all for the input.
Yeah. And we have the environmental justice mapping money
We
to
have
go find the spots now for these young people to go.
Do you want to take a selfie video?
Can we do that?
Celebrate?